The blanket I pulled over me every night was gone, just a clean square of dust where it used to be. On the shelf, the twin candle we'd kept for 30 years had been split, one half taken, the other leaned sideways, like it had been twisted too hard. I stood in the dark and didn't dare turn on the light, as if the truth, once seen, would scatter me across the floor. That was the night I realized I lost everything. Are you certain the home you're living in today is really yours? My name is Dorothy June Patterson. I am 66 years old. I spent 30 years building a home in Lewiston, Idaho, with a man I trusted more than anyone else in the world. When Walter bought the house, it was just a small wooden box with a leaky roof and chipped paint. He owned it before we married. Back then, it had one bedroom and a crooked porch, but together, we expanded it, added a new kitchen, closed in the back patio, and planted rose bushes along the fence. I chose the curtains. He installed the windows. Every part of that house had our hands in it, our time, our money. We laid tile by hand. He knocked down the old laundry wall with a sledgehammer. I remember the sound of it, the crunch, the laughter, the way we argued over where to put the shelf. On the day we finished the guest room, I bought a little copper bell and hung it by the window. When the breeze came through, it made the softest sound, but his name stayed on the title, and I never thought to question it, not once. Walter worked as a repairman, heating systems, water tanks, old refrigerators. I used to be a nurse at the hospital nearby, but I've been retired for several years now. We had 2 children grown now, living their own lives in different states. They came back for holidays, sometimes stayed the weekend, but mostly, it was just Walter and me, and the silence between us. In the last year, Walter had been quieter. He spent more time away from home, said he was fixing things for old clients, but when I asked who, he changed the subject. I found envelopes in the trash with bank logos on them ripped open, empty. I told myself it was nothing. I wanted to believe that. Sometimes he would come home and smell like cologne, not the one I bought him. I told myself it was just transfer from someone else's house, maybe an old widow whose boiler broke down. But the scent clung too long. Then came the argument. It was just a small one about the roof. I said we needed to fix the leak before winter. He said he wasn't going to waste money on a place he didn't plan to stay in much longer. I thought he meant he was tired, frustrated, maybe just being dramatic. That night, he packed a bag. I'm leaving, he said, and I'm filing for divorce. I didn't believe him. He had said things like that before, but he always came back by morning. This time, he didn't. 3 days later, I returned from the grocery store to find a man standing at the gate. He had a clipboard and a real estate badge around his neck. He asked if I was the current occupant. I told him this was my home. He looked confused. This property has been sold, he said. The buyer takes possession in 7 days. I laughed. It didn't sound like my laugh. It sounded empty. Inside, I found an envelope on the kitchen table. It wasn't sealed. The papers inside were cold, mechanical, a sale agreement, Walter's signature, a payment receipt. Everything neat, legal, final. He sold everything. The house, the land, the life. I opened the bedroom door. His clothes were gone. The drawer where he kept his keys was empty. The garage, too just dust in his absence. I sat down on the edge of the bed and couldn't feel the floor beneath my feet. I walked back to the kitchen and turned on the faucet. Water ran over a single plate left in the sink. I let it spill. I didn't move. There was no letter, no note, no goodbye. Just this silence and the echo of my own breath in a room that no longer belonged to me. I touched the wall beside the door frame. I remembered painting it white, then redoing it in soft yellow. I had chosen that color. I was proud of it. But now it felt like someone else's decision in someone else's house. The next morning, I wandered through each room like a stranger. I stared at my bookshelf, unsure if I was allowed to touch it anymore. I opened the hallway closet and stood looking at the mop and the old coats and a bag of screws. It was the first time I realized I was trying to memorize the shape of things, because I knew I wouldn't see them again. I sat down in the hallway, pulled my knees to my chest, and stared at the ceiling until the light began to fade. In that moment, the truth pressed into me like cold glass. I lost everything, and when I looked around, there was no house left. Not for me, not even a corner to call my own. Some people think the worst thing that can happen in a marriage is being yelled at, left, or cheated on. But there is something far colder than betrayal. It's being erased without a sound. Not as a punishment, just as a formality, like you never counted. That was what happened to me. What I learned is simple and terrible if your name is not on the deed. The law may not recognize your presence. Even after 3 decades of folding sheets, fixing windows, paying bills, and baking birthday cakes in that kitchen, I was legally invisible. I believed being married gave me security. I believed that being a wife meant I shared everything my husband owned. In reality, the house we lived in just because he purchased it before the marriage remained his. No matter what I added to it, no matter how many memories I left inside those walls, the paper said he owned it. So when he sold everything, the law didn't ask for my permission. Because on paper, I wasn't there. This is the part no one warns you about. It's not just that your marriage can fail. It's that the failure can be quiet, official, and perfectly legal. I had always thought grey divorce was something that happened to people with big pensions, or second marriages, or unresolved fights. I never thought it could happen after a long, mostly stable marriage. I never thought it would happen to someone who still cooked dinner every evening and folded her husband's laundry on Sundays. But it happens, more often than anyone says out loud. And when it does, the shock isn't loud, it's structural. You lose the foundation you didn't even realize you were standing on. Walter left no letter. He didn't need to. The contract had already spoken. It said I didn't matter, and what the law didn't give me, I couldn't get back. There was no house left, no room to sleep in, no legal ground to stand on. That's why I had to start over with a lawyer. Not for revenge, just for fairness. We traced every repair, every dollar I contributed, every year I spent in that house. We built a case not on emotion, but on facts. Because the law won't respond to heartbreak, it responds to documentation. Looking back, I don't blame Walter entirely. He did what he had the legal right to do. But just because something is legal doesn't make it decent. And I take responsibility for the silence I kept, for never asking to put my name on what I was building, for not checking, for thinking I was protected by love when I needed to be protected by law. So now, I tell the truth, not to shame him, but to wake someone else up before they find out the same way I did. Because once the house is gone, it's too late to say you lived there. I moved into a small apartment on the east side of Lewiston, near the river. It's nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, a small galley kitchen, a window that looks out onto the parking lot. But the lease is in my name. The mailbox has my name on it too. And when I turn the key in the door, I know who it belongs to. At first, I cried every time I unpacked a box. I cried when I hung up my winter coat, and there was no peg for his. But something shifted when I opened my own bank account. I walked into the credit union alone and signed the papers without needing anyone's permission. I started writing down every expense, every receipt, every account that had my name or didn't. I made a file. It was the first thing I organized in years that was just for me. I went to the courthouse and asked for a copy of the property sale. I requested Walter's filing records and found the date he sold the house. That was the day my name disappeared from the life I had built, but it wasn't the end. I met with a legal aid counselor who helped me write a basic will. I made sure my children would know exactly what belonged to me and where it would go. I updated my emergency contact forms, my Medicare records, and the beneficiary on my retirement savings. I started going to the senior center on Wednesdays. There's a woman there named Marsha who teaches a class on legal basics for late life planning. She's sharp, direct, and kind. I sit in the front row. I ask questions now. I write things down. I also joined a circle of women who gather on Thursdays to talk about things we thought we'd never say out loud. Most of us were married. Many of us aren't anymore. We don't blame, we just share. And we remind each other that what was lost doesn't define us. I still miss the house. I miss the porch in autumn, the creak of the wood floor near the hallway, the old bell I hung by the window. But I don't miss the silence. I don't miss waiting for someone to return who had already left in every way but physical. I speak now. I lost everything. But I found something too, my name, my ground, and the sound of my own voice in a room that finally belongs to me. Sometimes healing doesn't mean rebuilding the past. It means building something smaller, but solid, with your name etched into every brick. So if you're reading this, do one thing before the weekends. Find out whose name is on your deed, your lease, your accounts. Not what you think, what the paper says. Because love should never be the only thing keeping you inside a home. And if you've already been through something like this, don't stay silent. Leave a comment. Tell your story. Another woman is reading, and she needs to know she's not alone.